The Sonic series is known for its unrivaled movement options and level designs that accommodate the blistering speeds you can reach. So much so that it's been said that the strategy surrounding these games is hold right to win. But is it really? Can you really beat these games by just holding left or right? I wanted to find this out for myself, so I loaded up Sonic Origins, a compilation of first 4 games with some extras, and challenged myself to complete as much of content as I could with as few up or down presses as possible. I won't be including Game Gear games that were also included, as this video will be way too long, but I might cover them in a future video. So with the challenge set, let's start this crazy project. But first, I want to clarify something. I tried not to use abilities that weren't in the original releases, so I didn't use a drop dash in any of the games, but I will be bringing it up if using it is the only way to get past an obstacle. Anyway, first up is Sonic 1. Your moveset is pretty bare bones in this game, only being able to jump and roll into a ball by pressing down while moving. Obviously, we want to avoid doing the latter. Thankfully, this game isn't too hard. You might think we get stuck at Green Hill because of these destructible walls, but we can just go around them. Marble and Spring Yard zones go by without much trouble, as well as Labyrinth. Although if you're like me and take the secret path in Act 3, you'll get a reality check for not playing the game correctly and be trapped in the water current section, dying a painful death. Side note, but am I the only person who thought the secret path was the actual path? After following the script and taking the much longer main path, I got through the rest of the zone without any issues. Starlight Zone is basically the same as a normal playthrough, and the same is true for Scrap Brain, apart from it being just a little more difficult to take the secret path in Act 3, which doesn't have any required vertical inputs. The final boss is much the same as a normal playthrough, with it being just a little bit more difficult to dodge some of the orb patterns, but that's all. After defeating it, Sonic 1 was over, requiring no up or down presses. Before moving on to next game, I just want to say that I'm just trying to get to the end, not get the good ending. That being said, it is entirely possible to get all of the Chaos Emeralds, as pressing up or down does absolutely nothing in the special stage. The next game is Sonic CD. Unlike the last game, you are able to spin dash by pressing down and jump and super peel out with up and jump. For obvious reasons, our moveset is exactly the same as before. You would think that these new abilities would be required in certain sections, but surprisingly, this isn't the case. In Palm Tree Panic, the only obstacles are some destructible walls that block some of the paths, but you can just jump into them and they'll break. And even if you couldn't, these levels are incredibly large with several paths, and also completely change if you time travel into the past or future. The robot boss is as easy as ever, and Collision Chaos goes by without much trouble, other than this part where I got trapped in this section. Luckily, I managed to escape using the bumpers. The only other noteworthy thing that happened in this zone was when I somehow clipped above the level in Act 2. The pinball boss went by without incident, although the physics are pretty annoying. Tidal Tempest Act 1 is the same as normal, but we encounter a small problem in Act 2. There's this part where you're forced into a water current section, and have no way to escape without pressing up. Another one of those. The only other way you can go isn't any better, requiring a down input. Fortunately, a little earlier in the level, there's a split into 3 different paths. The one on the right leads to the water currents, so if you take the left or center routes, you shouldn't run into them. However, I didn't notice when I did the run, so I time traveled into the past, avoiding that section entirely as there are no currents there. However, the rest of the zone is normal. Quartz Quadrant is completely trivial, as there are no differences from a normal run. Wacky Workbench is just as annoying and confusing as always, but this doesn't present any barriers to the challenge. Likewise, Stardust Speedway presents no issues, with the Metal Sonic race in Act 3 still being entirely winnable with the power of our leg muscles. Metallic Madness Act 2 seems like it could pose a problem, with parts where you have to choose which direction to go in while in the tube. Luckily, none of the cubes require an up or down input, and the only other problem was me getting trolled by the devs. Act 3 is the same as a casual run, with the definitely not final boss being a piece of cake as usual, completing Sonic CD with 0 up or down inputs. If you want to get the good ending, you have to either destroy all of the robot generators by going to the past version of every stage, or get all of the time stones by going to special stages. Both are feasible methods, but I would recommend getting the time stones, as like Sonic 1, up and down inputs do absolutely nothing in the special stages. Next up is Sonic 2. This game was the first to introduce a spin dash, so I was a little bit concerned that I would be forced to use it at certain points. But other than that, I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Basically all of the levels play the same as a normal playthrough, primarily due to the emphasis on speed. Emerald Hill, Chemical Plant, Aquatic Ruin, and Casino Night were all pretty simple to get through. Hilltop Zone wasn't too hard either, however, there is something I should mention. At 2 different instances, there are loops that lead directly into breakable blocks, which had me worried for a second. Luckily, you can break the blocks by jumping on them. Mystic Cave went by without a hitch, but I decided to take an alternate route and enter Hidden Palace Zone. There was no reason for me to do this, but I managed to clear it without any issues. And don't worry, you can beat Act 2 of Mystic Cave normally. I just wanted to try to shake things up. Oil Ocean is the same as a normal playthrough, and the same is true for Metropolis. Sky Chase Zone is mostly similar to a casual run, with the caveat of not being able to move the tornado up or down obviously. Wing Fortress is also clearable without vertical input, but I did get flashbacks from this section, which is quite reminiscent of the water current sections from 1 and CD. Thankfully, you can get past without needing to press up or down. Defect Zone has some slight differences from a normal playthrough, as you can't spin dash on Mechasonic Mark 1 to get 4 free hits. The Defect robot fight is virtually the same, and with Eggman defeated, that marks the end of Sonic 2 with no vertical input required. I will say this was actually my first time beating this game, which was cool. If you're after the good ending, once again the special stages don't require you to press up or down, so it's entirely possible to get all of the Chaos Emeralds. Now we're at Sonic 3, and this is where things start getting interesting. Sonic is now able to do an insta-shield by tapping jump arm in the air. In addition, there are elemental shields which will be of varying use in the challenge. Angel Island Act 1 can be cleared without pressing up or down, however, you will have to get a fire shield before the boss and not take damage. This is because immediately at the start of Act 2, there's a rock wall blocking where you need to go. Using the fire shield, we can dash through it, and most of the act is trivial. However, near the end there's another rock wall that we have to go through. Luckily, if you lost your fire shield earlier, there's another one nearby. Next up is Hydrocity Zone.
Yay!
Okay, the quality should be a little... Oh crap, I forgot that you're not... Oh, that's going to be a really big problem in this zone. Unlike the water current sections in Sonic 1 and Sonic CD, the ones in Hydrocity automatically move you upwards when you aren't hanging onto a bar. After that revelation, Act 1 can be cleared without pressing up or down. Unfortunately, Act 2 isn't gonna go so well. We're put in front of a bunch of breakable walls, which we can't use the fire shield for, as it extinguishes when you enter water. Darn it, why does there have to be realism in this game? Fortunately, as we're underwater, we have just enough time to use a drop dash. To get up the ramps and escape the wall, drop dashes also have to be used. Sadly, just after the ramps are another series of breakable walls that are above water, so it's impossible to drop dash as the ceiling is too low. So is this it then? Will we have to make our first down press here? Actually, no! If you do a drop dash on a ramp, then jump at the right time, you just have enough space to do another drop dash. You'll have to repeat this trick for another above water set of barriers, but after that, Hydrosity Act 2 is perfectly feasible. Marble Garden Act 1 can pose a huge problem if you take the wrong path, because of these tires. They usually move platforms and allow you to progress, but can only be activated with a spin dash. In the original version of Sonic 3. In Sonic Origins, you can activate them with a drop dash. There are a bunch of breakable walls that you can break with either a drop dash or the fire shield as well. The mid-boss and most of Act 2 are also easily clearable. You might be thinking the boss fight is going to be an issue, as we can't move up to hit Eggman, but it is possible to. After defeating him again, Marble Garden is done with 0 up or down wait. Unfortunately, it seems that the game has had a last laugh, as no matter how hard you try, you can't reach the Animal Capsule. However, if you manage to get a lightning shield and beat the boss without getting hit, with a precise jump and the right timing, you can just barely press the button and complete the level. Carnival Night Act 1 is a bit of a breather, being easily clearable without vertical input. However, Act 2 isn't nearly as easy. Near the end of the stage, there's a switch where you have to spin dash from in order to continue the level, as the spikes prevent you from just walking through, and it's too low to drop dash. But I devised a plan, and this is how it went. Yes! After that insane move, I went a bit further and oh no. The Barrel of Doom. The most infamous obstacle in Sonic 3, and even more so in a no up or down run. There's no way to continue without pressing up or down. But I figured I may as well try to minimize the damage. I jumped a bunch until the barrel went as low as possible without any inputs, then I pressed up and down once to escape. The rest of the zone, including boss, went fine. Other than a couple of required drop dashes at these sections, both acts of Ice Cap Zone are entirely clearable without vertical input. Launch Base has no major differences from a casual playthrough, with the only thing of note being the fact that you can damage the Big Arms boss when it's below you by using the Insta-Shield. This is actually my first time seeing the cutscene at the end of the zone when Deathhead crashes back onto Angel Island, so that's cool I guess. Unfortunately, we're about to enter Mushroom Hill Zone. There's one thing that makes this level probably the most annoying to clear in this entire challenge. These contraptions that only move up if you press down. Thankfully, in most circumstances you can avoid them by taking top path. Keyword most. You can get through all of Act 1 and almost all of Act 2 before running into one that is unavoidable. Looking at a map, there's no way to get past it. To move the machine high enough to continue, you need to press down 14 times. Yep, I counted every single one individually. Thankfully, the rest of the zone doesn't require any more vertical inputs. Flying Battery isn't too different from a normal playthrough, however, in Act 1, the section with the propellers can't be cleared without a short up press, but other than that, the rest of the zone is completely possible. Now it's time for Sendopolis, infamously one of the more frustrating levels in Sonic 3. However, Act 1 really isn't that bad, and none of the annoying design choices made in Act 2 require any vertical input. Lava Reef presents another obstacle for this challenge. These elevators that require a continuous spin dash. Unfortunately, the drop dash isn't going to cut it. There are 2 of these that are required to my knowledge, so that brings the total to 17 down presses. Other than those, the rest of the zone is perfectly clearable. Hidden Palace isn't really worth mentioning as it's really short, but it is possible without any vertical inputs, and the same is true for Sky Sanctuary. Finally, there's Deathhead Zone. There was a bit of a scary moment here with the anti-gravity section in Act 1, but you can clear it and the rest of the act without any up or down presses. Unfortunately, in Act 2, there are these multi-directional tunnels, and near the end, there's one that requires you to press down to progress. The final bosses aren't significantly different from a casual run, and with Eggman being defeated again, Sonic 3 was finished, with 18 down presses and 2 up presses. But that's just Sonic's campaign. Essential feature of Sonic 3 is additional playable characters with distinct abilities. While Tails isn't that useful for this challenge, Knuckles certainly is, with his ability to break through walls by running into them. He also has the benefit of a shorter campaign with some different level design. So I restarted, and played through Angel Island Zone again. Although the path is a bit different at the start of Act 2 to cater to Knuckles' moveset, it is still possible. After finishing the first act of Hydrosity, which is much the same as Sonic's, we're back at Act 2. We can run through the barriers now, but unfortunately right after we encounter another problem. The walls slowly moving towards us. As Sonic, you can just drop dash, but Knuckles can't do that, so we're seemingly stuck. Fortunately, there is something we can do. Knuckles also has a couple extra abilities aside from being able to break through barriers. He can glide, cling onto walls, and climb them. And surprisingly, we're actually able to cling onto the wall that's moving towards us. Now all we need to do is climb— oh, right. Knuckles is unable to climb up or down walls without pressing up or down. Without being able to climb, we're stuck. Or are we? When you jump up to cling onto a wall, if you glide back immediately, you will gain a little bit of height. So if we repeat that maneuver over and over, we can slowly climb up the wall. This is pretty tricky to do, as we have a tight time limit, and if you mess up once, you'll fall down and get crushed. But after a few attempts, this happened. This is so hardcore, what the heck is this?
Sega didn't think about people trying to make Sonic 3 times harder. I'm still trying to figure out a really hard game that requires parkour. Now jump on the wall, and then glide, and then now wait. Wait, if you climb up, you can theoretically climb up the wall, can't you? There.
Yes! God. After that showcase of hardcore gaming, okay, it's probably not that cool. The only other difficult part is this large room where you have to climb up the left wall, then time a jump onto this platform. The rest of the act is mostly the same as a normal playthrough. Marble Garden is more dangerous as Knuckles because of the spin dash tires, as he doesn't have any other way to activate them. However, I was able to find a path through Act 1 that didn't have any. Act 2 is a similar story, locking you out of most paths. I had to consult a map here. Things were going well up until this section, where you had to destroy this wall enemy thing to destroy part of the roof, allowing you to progress. However, it's high up, and when you glide into it, you fall back to the ground. The only way to get back up is to go all the way to the left and climb up the wall, but this respawns the enemy. In the left corner is a spin dash tire that raises platforms, allowing you to defeat the enemy. The only way to progress is to spin dash on the tire, requiring our first down press of the run. Almost immediately after this section is another mandatory spin dash tire. The boss is different from Sonic's story, and it is entirely defeatable in this challenge, and we don't get killed by the animal capsule being just out of reach. Carnival Night is a bit of a different story from Sonic's version. I was a bit wary when I did the run because of the Barrel of Doom. Thankfully, Knuckles can take an exclusive path that avoids it entirely. As a result, both acts are pretty easy, and there isn't really much to say. Ice Cap Zone has us run straight into a literal and figurative wall. We can't run through it, so our only choice is to spin dash, marking our third down press. As Knuckles, we can bypass this part by jumping off this platform at top of its arc. The rest of Ice Cap Zone is the same as a normal playthrough, apart from some climbing tricks. Launch Base Act 1 is similar to a casual run, apart from needing to utilize the climbing trick a few times. Act 2 is similar, with the boss being the only difficult part because I haven't fought it many times, and not a single time as Knuckles. Mushroom Hill is both easier and more difficult as Knuckles. We can get past all of the pulley machines by using climbing trick. However, there's another issue that we didn't need to consider as Sonic. This blatant troll by the developers. No matter how fast you go, if you run into one of these bramble things, it's an instant restart as Knuckles, unless you're near an edge where you can go down. The best course of action is to take it slow and try to jump and glide over everything as much as possible, as sometimes they are hidden by the foreground. If you're careful, Act 1 isn't too annoying. Act 2 is more of the same. If you repeat the same strategy, you should be fine. The only other part worth mentioning is here, where you're seemingly unable to climb up past the contraption thing. However, if you use a spring and jump off at just the right time, you can get up onto the space above and climb out. Flying Battery Act 1 is a bit easier as Knuckles with his abilities. We can avoid the up press from Sonic's run by just climbing up, and this part with the moving logs or whatever they are can be avoided by going up and taking a different path. Act 2 is a bit more frustrating, mainly because of these screw platforms that will crush you if you aren't fast enough to go through them in time. But other than that, the rest of the act is the same as the normal playthrough. Sandopolis is a similar story to Sonic's run for the most part. Act 1 is basically the same, with the only notable thing being whatever happened here. What? Act 2 is pretty different, with a Knuckles exclusive path where I got stuck for a bit near the end. At first, I didn't know you had to break a stopper to fill the room with sand, but once I watched the video guide and actually knew what to do, I managed to just barely get into the small gap with the climbing trick and break the stopper. After that, the rest of the act wasn't too annoying. Lava Reef had me a bit worried about the elevators that require a continuous spin dash to activate, but luckily, Knuckles takes a different route from Sonic, and after looking at a map, there was in fact a way to avoid all of the elevators. The only obstacle in Act 2 is these fire geysers on the Knuckles only path. They're placed directly in the path of where we need to climb up, making it nearly impossible to get up without getting hit and falling down. I managed to get past with a lucky hit boosting me onto the ledge. Hidden Palace, just like Sonic's story, isn't worth mentioning, so Sky Sanctuary is next. The final boss is almost exactly the same as a normal playthrough, but you can't spin dash to get more hits in. After defeating Mecha Sonic Mark II, Sonic 3 was complete, with a much lower total of just 3 down presses. Before moving on, the Blue Sphere stages, like all of the other special stages, don't require vertical inputs, but you will be in a bit of trouble if you bump into a spring. Other than that, it is possible to get all of the emeralds. The secret final boss is possible without pressing up or down, but it is incredibly difficult. You basically have to spam the jump button and hold right so you move through the first part as fast as humanly possible. You will likely get to the second phase of 45 or so rings. You basically have about 20 to 25 seconds to hit the boss with its missiles 8 times, otherwise you will run out of rings before the third phase starts. It's incredibly annoying to redirect the missiles without vertical movement, and you basically have to get it nearly perfect. Oh my god! Phew, now that game is over and done with. Now we can move on to the missions. I do want to say that I will only be mentioning missions that are made more difficult by the challenge, so the ones I don't mention are the exact same as they would usually be. I will post an unlisted video of me clearing all of the challenges though if you want to see for yourself. For the Sonic 1 missions, you might notice this one named Sonic Spin Dash Attack. Don't worry, any kills with the drop dash also count as kills with the spin dash, so you don't have to press down at all. The extreme variant is a bit more annoying, having to kill buzz bombers with a ground-based attack, but likewise, still possible. The missions for Sonic CD weren't really that different without vertical input. Perhaps the time travel ones were a little harder, or the one where I had to kill 30 Kama, where I kept getting stuck at the bottom. But the only other thing that's noteworthy is that they somehow made Sonic CD's first boss harder. Sonic 2's missions, on the other hand, weren't so easy. The first few weren't really that bad though, with the only interesting thing being me having to drop dash at the end of the Pinball Pro challenge. Then there was the bullet hail mission. I've definitely played too much Toho. It was easy, however Sonic fell off the plane at the end, which was really weird. The Animal Rescue mission was a bit more challenging due to the inability to spin dash, but it was probably mainly a skill issue on my part. So far, the missions have been hard, but ultimately still clearable without pressing up or down. Then, there's a tough get going. Collect 20 rings as Knuckles and reach a goal. This doesn't sound so hard, but it is incredibly easy to get hit and lose your rings. And even if you get past the arrows and enemies, there's one final wall with totem pole enemies really close to it. Obviously, the solution will be to do the climbing trick from earlier, right? Wrong. For some reason, they will fire the arrows whenever you jump. There might be a way around this, but I decided to bite the bullet and press up one time to climb the wall. After clearing a few more, the last mission for Sonic 2 is... oh, you've got to be kidding me. Extreme the tough get going. A higher ring count, and also in Sonic 2's most frustrating stage, Metropolis Act 3. Fortunately, the totem poles on the wall at the start don't fire when you jump, so it's feasible to use a climbing trick. But this mission was still insanely difficult, with it being really hard to collect 50 rings and not get hit. After a lot of attempts, this happened. Come on, please, please, please! Yes! Sonic 3's missions weren't as difficult for the most part. There were the Knuckles climbing challenges that worried me a bit, but they are surprisingly possible without climbing up or down. The first really annoying part was the water shield challenge, where I had to make a precise jump in order to not get hit. The rest of the challenges weren't really affected by the lack of vertical inputs, but were still pretty hard. After clearing the final challenge, I was done. In total, the 4 main games and the mission mode required a minimum of 3 down presses and 1 up press. That's a lot less than I thought there would be. This was a really fun challenge, and I'm up to do it again with other Sonic games. If you liked this video and want to see more, consider subscribing. I'm working on a lot of cool ideas and you won't want to miss them. Anyway, thanks for watching.